A normal one-bedroom apartment in Seattle rents for about $2,500 a month. That same apartment, one bedroom in a good walkable neighborhood in a city like Granada, Spain, runs about €700 per month. Same size, but roughly a third of the price. So you'd think moving to Europe is an easy way to cut your cost of living, and most of the time it is. But not always, and not for everyone. I'm Kristen. I wrote the book Moving Abroad for Dummies, and I've been helping people move abroad for more than 20 years to many European countries like Spain, France, Italy, Portugal, the Netherlands, and beyond. And what I've noticed in a lot of cost of living videos is that they're too general, but not in this video. In this video, you're gonna get the honest version, real prices from my own personal experiences and those of my relocation clients from their real budgets that I help them calculate. And we're gonna break it down category by category so you can get an accurate idea of what your cost of living might really be in Europe. Before we start talking numbers though, I wanna share with you how I'm comparing these two sides because this is where most videos go wrong. You can't just take the national average cost of living in the US and hold it against the national average in Spain, for instance, because both places swing a lot depending on where you are. A big coastal city is a completely different number from a quiet town a couple hours inland, and that's true on both sides of the ocean. Inside one country, your cost of living can vary a lot from one region to the next, so a national average barely tells you anything about what your actual life will cost. What I do instead is compare like for like. I take the kind of US cities my clients are leaving, places like Seattle, Los Angeles, Austin, Texas, and I match them against a livable, non-touristy European city. Not the cheapest village in the mountains, not the postcard center of Barcelona either, but a normal, good place to live. And I keep each country in its own currency, US numbers in dollars and European numbers in euro, because that's what you'll be spending in once you're there. So the anchor number, and this is important because it can kind of give you a frame of reference for the whole video. So a lot of my clients in the US are looking to live on between $2,000 to $4,000, maybe $5,000 a month when they move abroad. But the truth is they're living on more now. So a lot of people are having to spend from $5,000 to $7,000, $8,000 a month just to get by where they're living in the US, especially if they're in a big city like Seattle, LA, San Francisco. But the good news is that oftentimes people can cut their cost of living in half by moving to Europe. And so that's really the trend that I see. One of my couples moving to Europe often lands between 2,000 and 2,800 euro per month all in, and a single person can do it for less, around 1,500 to 2,000 euro if they're thrifty. So that's the main thing. And then the rest of this video is where that savings actually comes from, one category at a time. So that's what we're gonna get into. Let's start with the biggest line in anyone's budget and the place that the savings are the easiest to see: rent. So when I pull the actual listings that are available right now online in some of the most livable European cities, the average prices that I'm seeing for an unfurnished studio or one-bedroom apartment are starting from around 650 to 850 euro per month. Of course, your short-term furnished Airbnbs are gonna be a lot more than that, but we're talking long-term here if you're gonna be moving to a country, getting a visa, getting a residency permit, and staying there, right? So Granada in Spain and Braga in Portugal sit near the low end, around 700 euro per month, and then we have Toulouse in France and Verona in Italy that run a little higher, closer to 750. And if you're a couple and you want a two-bedroom, then the ceiling before you start paying a real city premium is around 1,200 to 1,500 euro per month. Now let's compare that real data to the prices that many of my US-based clients are leaving behind. So if we pull that same kind of listing data from nomads.com, which has cost of living figures around the world, the average one bedroom in Seattle is about $2,500 per month. Denver, $1,700, Austin, $1,600, Atlanta, $1,300. So the move from a city like Seattle to Granada, Spain takes you from $2,500 a month down to 700 euro for the same type of apartment. So that one category by itself pays for a big chunk of your new life. I'll be honest about the other side of it though, because if you're already living in a very low cost city in the United States, then you're not going to see as big of a cost savings when it comes to your rent. And in some cases, if you don't have to pay rent at all because your house is paid off, then you'll be adding a new line item to your budget that's not there at the moment. So where you're coming from matters as well as where you're going. And hold on to that thought because it's going to be relevant throughout the end of this video. Next up, groceries. And I'm only talking about groceries here, not eating out. That's a whole separate category that we're going to get to in a minute. But it's no surprise that grocery prices have been on the increase in the United States, astronomical levels. I personally myself can spend $800 to $1,000 per month on groceries, and I know families that spend more than that. In Europe, however, it's a lot less. So there's a European grocery basket study that I'll link in this video that breaks it down per person per month in different countries across Europe, and you'll see that France comes in at around 227 euro per month, in Italy 223, Spain 165 per month, and Portugal 143. Spain and Portugal are below average when it comes to the EU average of the basic basket, and France and Italy sit right above it. So a local couple living in France is probably looking at spending around 400, maybe 450 euro per month on their groceries, and in some place like Spain or Portugal, it might be closer to 300. But if you're from the US and you're looking to buy, some more specialty products, or you're trying to not stick to this exact basic basket of groceries, then your grocery bill might be a lot higher, but it could still be around, a half of what it is in the US. Now, when you'd rather someone else do the cooking, that gap in savings gets even bigger because eating out is a category that surprises people the most, and it really changes how you live day to day. So a dinner out in Europe in these same cities can start at about $9 in Braga, 12 in Granada, 15 in Verona, and 17 in Toulouse. But in the US, that same dinner can be more like $20 to $25 if you're in a city like Seattle or LA, and that's before the tip that we are all obligated to leave. So when a good plate of food is $12 instead of $22, you stop treating a restaurant like a special occasion. And many of my clients end up eating out more often and still spending less than they did back home because they can sit at a cafe and enjoy their coffee without running the math in their head first. This next category is one that, besides rent, really moves the math the most. And this is one that a lot of people ask me about: healthcare. Healthcare is a topic keeping a lot of people in the US up at night, and for very good reason. I ended my healthcare because I just moved to Europe and I ended up having to pay $500 for a doctor's visit on my way out. So it's real, and I'm going to give you the real version here. So when you first move to a foreign country, you will start out with a private health insurance plan. This is something that you'll typically need to show during the visa application process to get approved for your visa. But once you move there, in some cases after a certain waiting period or after the bureaucracy does its thing within a few months or a year, you can start opting into the local public healthcare system, which can be cheaper. My clients typically pay between 150 to 200, maybe 250 euro per month for their private insurance plan abroad. And it can actually be a lot higher if you're doing an international plan, but this is for country specific plans. But the figures that I hear in the US are obviously much more. I think on the low end, we're looking at $500 or $600 per month per person. So you save money automatically when you are switching from your US insurance typically to a plan in a foreign country, even if it's a private plan. And then the longer you stay in that country, once you can get into the public healthcare system, you can save even more money. In some cases, it could be essentially, I don't want to use the word free, but it can be very low cost compared to what you're used to. And then there's transportation. So when my clients move to Europe and when I'm living in Europe, virtually none of us buy a car. And this is a big change from the US, where almost everybody has at least one car, or if they're a couple, they might have 2 cars or even more. So this is a big area where you can save money because it costs around $1,000 per month per vehicle in the US for your car payment, your insurance, your gas, your maintenance, and it could definitely be more than that too. Compare that to a transport card, a public transport card over in Europe, and we're talking anywhere from 30 to 60, 70 euro per month. And in some cases, people have reported, my clients, people on Reddit, I've seen people say that they made it through a whole year spending less than 250 euro on their public transportation, especially if you're walking a lot or riding your bike. This is an area where you can save thousands and thousands of dollars per year. Now, you can probably feel your budget shrinking as we get through this video, and that's great news. But if you want to calculate your exact budget for you, then I have exactly that. I have a travel and moving abroad budget on my website. It's completely free to download. I will leave the QR code and a link below this video, and that way you can calculate your budget before, during, and after you move with a very high degree of certainty. But we're gonna keep going now because there's a big topic that a lot of videos skip, and that is our good friend, taxes. So the first thing that you need to know is that as a US citizen, you are required to file a tax return regardless of where you live in the world. The good news is that a lot of countries have tax treaties with the US, so you should almost never in any case be double taxed. But of course, I'm not an accountant, so make sure to get your own professional advice on your situation. But if you do read France-US tax treaty, riveting read by the way, you can see more of these details about how each tax is treated. The tax rates, of course, can vary by country and also the type of income that is taxable. Some countries might not tax you at all on your worldwide income, so you would just file your US tax return and you theoretically wouldn't have to pay taxes in that other country, whereas some countries will, exclude, like you'd have to report your retirement income or your pension income, but you wouldn't necessarily have to pay taxes on it. And then most European countries have what's called a progressive tax system, where you get taxed progressively higher as your income goes up on that next amount of income that is in that bracket, if that makes sense. But a big area that people don't talk about is the actual filing costs and the compliance around taxes, especially from the US side. Now, I like to have somebody file my US taxes for me because they get complicated. So if you're filing in the US and then you're also filing abroad and you're hiring an accountant in another country or a gestor in Spain or somebody, like this can add up to a couple $1,000s or so of extra fees per year for living abroad that a lot of people don't think about when they are budgeting for your move. So make sure to keep that in mind. So taxes is something that people fear, but the next 3 things often blindside people, or they might not even notice that they're being charged these fees either, just that their bank account has a little bit less money in it at the end of the year. We don't want that for you, so I'm going to share with you right now what these 3 costs are. The first is banking. When you move money between dollars and euro, a normal US bank will take a cut on the exchange rate every time you convert money, usually between 2 to 5%, plus a fee on every wire transfer, which could be $25 to $35 outgoing and an incoming wire fee on the other side. It doesn't sound like much per transaction, but when you add it up, it makes a really big difference. Imagine if you spend $50,000 in a year, that can be a few $1,000s in extra fees that you're not necessarily even aware of. That's why all of my clients use Wise, and we even have a dedicated customer service department with them, as well as some really great rates. So I will go ahead and share my Wise QR code and link with you. You can get your first transfer up to $600 fee-free. And if you'd like more information on that and joining my relocation program and how we help you with setting up your banking structure for moving abroad, you can also inquire through my website, travelingwithkristen.com/relocation, to become one of our private clients and get our full service relocation support and strategy. Next up, we have your landing or setup costs. And these are some of the biggest ticket items you'll have other than your plane ticket. Things like your rent, your security deposit, and real estate agency fees that are often charged in Europe that we are not so accustomed to here in the US. So that can be 3 or 4 months of rent that you could have to pay upfront for a long-term rental. Add it all up and you could be looking at $5,000 to $10,000 before you've even moved in. This isn't a monthly cost, but you do need it in cash upfront, and it does catch some people off guard. The third one is a big exception, and it is for families. So international school tuition can be a large cost, especially if you're used to having your kids in free public school back in the US. Tuition in Spain or Portugal can run anywhere from 6,000 to 28,000 euro per year per child. And so 2 kids at the top of that range can really wipe out a lot of the money that you save on rent and healthcare and food combined. So for a lot of families, this number decides a lot of where to move and if that move makes financial sense at all. Which brings us to the question that we asked at the beginning: who saves money when they move to Europe and who doesn't? For most people, the answer is clear. If you're spending somewhere between $2,500 and $10,000 a month to live in the US, you're very likely to save money by moving to Europe. And this covers the large majority of the people that I talk to. And there are 3 types of people who might actually spend more money if they move to Europe. The first already has a very low cost of living in the US. So if you already own your home outright with no mortgage, or you live with family and don't pay rent, or you have federal assistance and your whole life in the US is costing around $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 a month, you could end up spending more in Europe than you're paying right now, because Europe is of course cheaper than Seattle, but it might not be living rent-free in America. The second is families paying for private international school. So just like I showed you, that one tuition line can really require a lot of spending. And some families make it work because they choose a good local public school instead, which can be free, or a lower cost private school. But if a very private international school is a non-negotiable for you, then make sure to run that tuition number before anything else. And the third is anyone set on the most expensive corners of Europe. So if your dream is to live in Switzerland or Monaco or Luxembourg, then that's a different conversation, because those places can cost as much as the US city you're leaving or more. So if you are moving there, don't assume that Europe automatically means cheaper, because it does depend where in Europe. So the real answer is not about which country in Europe wins, but is your lifestyle in Europe going to cost you less than it currently does in the United States? For a retiree in an average mid-cost US city, or a remote worker in a big city paying expensive rent, the answer is probably yes. You're going to save money by moving to most places in Europe. And for the person who is spending a very low amount of money in the US, it might be a lateral move to Europe, or even cost you a bit more. But if that's the case, then it's probably more about upgrading your quality of life and your happiness level, rather than being solely about saving money. And for that, there's a whole other regions of the world and different countries we can talk about, from Latin America to Southeast Asia and Africa, Middle East, where you can save more money. So if Europe is on the table for you, then your next step is to go deeper into the cost of living in the exact country you're interested in. I've left my specific cost of living videos for 2 popular countries, France and Spain, right here for you right now to watch next.